everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Traveling Therapist Podcast. Really excited to have our guest today, Bianca Hughes. She has quite a story that I think is going to be super inspirational to everybody. So, Bianca, welcome. And I always love to start out and just say, how did you go from being your typical therapist to a traveling therapist?
It's a personal journey, right? Definitely a personal journey. About 2 years ago, things shifted for me. So I've been a therapist for 10 years now. And I just think personally, things just shifted in terms of being able to let go of what I think life should look like or who I'm meant to be, and really connected more with my spirit of joy. I like to say my name's Bianca, but I have a spirit of joy. And so in that experience, probably 2.5 years ago, I ended up just decided when I was talking at an event, at a conference, and one of the things they talked about is things missing in your life. And one of them I felt like was maybe a bit more adventure. So I was like, oh, I think this time I'm really ready to sell my house. And I couldn't find a home to sell and move to. And I was like, well, that doesn't mean you have to sell a home to move into another one. And so I'm going to sell and move into an apartment. And then I put my house on the market and went to spend some time with my grandmother, who is Jamaican in Jamaica. And as I was writing on her beautiful garden, like, what do I want? And I was like, I actually want a sabbatical. I actually want a break. And so instead of moving into an apartment once I sold my house, I took a 3-month sabbatical at the beginning. So house was in the market end of October, sold on December the 28th and December the 31st. I was on a one-way ticket to Bali, Indonesia, spent 3 months. And so in January, that was December 23rd. And that really opened me up. So even though I didn't work until like towards the end, I was working some in Colombia, it really has opened up my mind. And sometimes now when I do, especially when I go to Jamaica to visit my grandmother, which I did a few weeks ago, I'm working while I'm there. And it kind of opened up that space for me to see, okay, you can do this. You can do this. You can do both.
Amazing, right? And I'm reacting in real time because I didn't know that it was like Bali and Indonesia and all that, right? I just knew she took a sabbatical because I read like her bio and stuff. But like genuinely, I'm like, oh my God, that's so cool. So, I mean, really, people listening, they're probably like, okay, so you decided you want to take a sabbatical for 3 months. Like, how do you even pull that off? I would love to just talk about that for a minute. Like, you decide, and then what do you do? Do you just like tell all your clients, look, I'm going to put you on hold for like 3 months, or, I'm going to give you to a different therapist for a little bit? Maybe we could just talk about logistics of that, because it sounds like eat, pray, love, right? It's like, okay, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to go to Bali and Indonesia for 3 months. I'm going to find myself and all this. But like, how do you pull that off? I would love to talk about that for a second.
Yeah. And everyone says that. When I told everyone's like, oh, you're doing eat, love, pray. So everyone says that. But what I think for me was the biggest focus, the biggest thing was I knew I needed this, and I really just needed that break. And so whenever I know I need to do something and I'm very set on something, that doesn't change or put any fear in there. And I was like, this could be a risk that some people don't come back. And some people didn't, but the majority of the people did. This could be a risk, but what was more important was me. So as soon as I realized what I was going to do and I made my decision, so I think it was so that was the end of October. So probably middle of November, I was letting clients know very early on, and giving them, funny enough, I didn't, which is really weird. What was interesting leading up to that, I hadn't had any new clients for like 2 months, which is very rare. And I
The
was like,
universe was making space for
maybe
this.
God was like, okay. So that helped that it was a lot of longer term clients. And so some of them were like, this is great. I get a break. And then I spoke to other therapists and I provided them all alternatives and things like that. But no one went anywhere in terms of saw another therapist. A lot of people were like, I'm going to take a break, or this is a great time for us to end. And so I would say doing all that, just having the letters, having the conversations with them, making sure I'm having all the conversations, right? And there was anyone I hadn't seen in a while, which I don't think was really anyone. I might have sent them an email and all of the information, but I had the conversations. And then after the conversations, then you also follow up with the email and the letter and all the resources and everything that they need. So just preparing and having that standard email so that they're prepared. And even I was actually meant to go for 2 months and changed it to be 3. So even when I realized that decision, emailing them and keeping them updated, like this is the date I'm coming back, checking in and just checking in. So I would say, and doing all that, I probably kept about 8, maybe not even 80, maybe 90%. Like there were people who didn't come back, but yeah, it wasn't like as bad as I thought it would be.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So did you set out when you were gonna take like, "I'm gonna take a sabbatical, I'm gonna do this." Did you set out and say, "This is where I wanna go?" Or, like, how did you pick, "This is the
No,
sabbatical?" Like,
no,
how did that happen? Tell us.
no, I didn't. My only focus was I just wanted to be. And the other thing I realized when I got there was like, we hold so much space. I didn't want to hold space for anyone. I actually, by the time I left, I was like, well, I would say definitely compassion fatigue and a little bit of burnout. I'd say more compassion fatigue. So by that time, I'd probably been a therapist for like 8 years. And so my only focus is I just want to be. I just want to be and I just want to flow. I don't want to have an agenda. So I bought a one-way ticket because I didn't know where I wanted to be next. And I didn't want to be like, oh, I have to go to my next destination. That was the best thing ever. So I would be in a destination and I'll be like, all right, it's time to go now. Where do I want to go next? And so like I was in Bali, Indonesia, went to a couple of the islands there. I remember going to Gili Air and I was like, yeah, I'll just be here for like 2 days and ended up spending 7. And then I went to Australia because I always wanted to see I want to see the 7 natural wonders. So I went to see the Great Barrier Reef. That was the only one where I had like a set time and dates and then left from there to Thailand. But when I got to Thailand, I didn't have a leave date. Again, I went there and did that was my best experience. It wasn't my favorite country, but my best experience because I did a silent Buddhism retreat for 7 days. I was meant to go for 3, couldn't find one for 3, went for 5 and ended up staying for 7. That was phenomenal. And then I was like, all
Whoa.
right,
Like,
I want to
no talking for a week, like, silent retreat, literally nothing. Oh
a
my
little
goodness.
bit of talking. Yeah. The only time you talked was when you had to talk to the person that you was working with. I'm not gonna lie, I did talk to a couple of people. But because you don't talk for so long, when you actually start talking again and hearing yourself, you're like, I actually don't want to talk. But it was hard work because you're doing meditation about 8, 9 hours a day. It's a very long day because you're up at like 4 a.m. with the monks. So it's a Buddhism. You're not going to bed till like, I think 9:30, 10:30. Yeah. It's a long
Oh
day.
my gosh, that is the coolest thing.
Yeah.
I mean, so
Yeah.
brave. I mean, to even just go do something like that, and it wasn't even
Thank
planned, I
you.
guess, you just kinda stumbled upon it, and you were like, "Okay, I'm gonna do this now."
Yeah,
Oh,
so a
that's
lot of
amazing.
and I want to do say to people that I've been a travel my whole life. I even used to work in the travel industry. My mom has had me on planes by myself
Hmm.
since I was like 8, 9, 10, right? So I'm very much used to traveling. So that part, I know people like, how did you do that? I'm like, well, it's kind of second nature. And then I'm very curious, I'm very resourceful. So I found my way. So even finding like the Buddhism retreats, you would join Facebook groups. And then the Facebook groups, then you would find WhatsApp groups. And then in the WhatsApp groups, you can reach out and be like, hey, has anyone done this? Has anyone done this? And then you find out all these resources. Or if, you're traveling and you're meeting other travelers and they'll tell you where to go and they'll tell you all the great things. So it's just such a different type of community. I especially felt that traveling community a lot more in when I was traveling in Asia, around Asia, in Australia. After that, went to home to London for a bit, then was in Gambia because my mom lives there for 2 weeks, and then Colombia. But also found community in Colombia, which I was there, ended up being there for 3 weeks. So
Wow, that's amazing. So, I know in your bio and, we talked a little bit before, how did the sabbatical help you sort of break out of that? You call it the prison of perfectionism. How did this like, maybe we could talk a little bit about, like, what your perfectionism was before, and then how did this experience help you get out of that and, the journey to get out of that? Because I think a lot of people listening, therapists, we are perfectionists, especially we enter in businesses or, we try to help others. You get that compassion fatigue and that
Mhm.
burnout and all of that. So I'd love to
Mhm.
talk about that. Like, how did you realize you were a perfectionist? And then how did this sabbatical like totally break you out of that, what you call the prison of perfectionism?
Yeah, I would say I been dealing with that for a very long time and done a lot of different works. And I think it's like evolved and got deeper over time. So I think for me, with the sabbatical, the area that it really touched, there's so many stories I could tell you forever, but there's so many. Like one of the ones when I was climbing this volcano in Bali and I didn't think I was going to make it. Everyone was ahead of me and I was trying to, but I had a guide and he stayed with me. And like in that experience, I was reminded to stay in my own lane. Don't look to the left, don't look to the right, which is a lot of the comparison that we do, right? And stay in my own lane and do what I'm assigned and focus on what I'm meant to be doing versus other people. And I will get to where I need to get to. And so from that experience as well, like everyone had gone ahead and they gone far ahead, was meant to see the sunrise, but they were just a bit late. So they didn't fully see the sunrise. But I got to another section before, and one of the girls I was with, woman I'd met at the time, she was like, "Oh, you actually got a better view of the sunrise than us." And I was like, wow. And, I was so worried about, I can't keep up. I can't keep up. That was a very big moment. And then in the meditation was another big one, was that I really like myself. The importance of liking yourself and not trying to, which comes in with the people pleasing or trying to perform for worthiness that comes with perfectionism, but like acceptance, right? That no, I'm a really cool person and I actually like me. I'm not trying to do anything to make anyone like me. I really, really like me and feel connected to myself. And so I think those are two, there were so many different moments, but those are definitely two of the biggest that stick out. And so that breaks you free because my business name is Authentically Be You. You're really able to connect to your authentic self and not try to live up to the expectations of other people, where a lot of where that perfectionism is. And so that was very huge.
And, I was going to say, like, how's it showing up in your life today? But really, before we hit record, I was saying to Bianca, I was like, this is like super casual and laid back. And that, I always say to my guests, I'm like, is there anything you want me to talk about? And she was like, literally, no, like, let's just like go with the flow and whatever's supposed to like authentically arise in my story is what will arise. And I thought that was
Mhm.
just like a beautiful, perfect example of not like trying to control the outcome of something, not have that perfectionism thing that a lot of people do. Like you go in with an agenda and want it to go a certain way, and it's very stressful to kinda live your life like that, so I
Yeah,
really loved hearing
it
you say
is.
that.
It
You're like, "Yeah,
is.
I
Thank
know."
you for that, Kim. And it's funny you mentioned that, is that it did help me like to be more flowy. But I will say that coming back and being back in a Western environment, you do get caught up again in doing and busyness and performing and outputs. But the thing is that I recognize it more now and I'm like, whoa, I don't need to live like this. This is not the end of the world. No, you're pushing yourself, you're doing more. Like, you don't need to do this. So I think I'm able to definitely catch it more. I remember always leaving Bali, getting ready to go to Australia and being back in the airport. And I remember being in the airport and having this sense of, oh, what do I need to buy? And I thought, huh? You've been gone for 3 weeks in Bali. You didn't think about buying anything. But as soon as it's like they had this fragrance of you need more. And it made me see how much in the Western world, particularly, it's always like, buy this, we need more, and we don't have enough. But I was just so content. Oh, that was the other thing too. In contentment was a big thing, especially in the meditation retreat. I was sleeping like on this thin mat on the floor and I was the most joyful ever. And it makes you see like we don't need all this stuff. And I had hurt my foot. I had hurt my ankle, fell off a bike, lying on this floor in pain, but I was still joyful.
Wow. That's amazing. It's making me feel emotional today. I don't know, it's like I almost needed to hear this message today in my Ebb life. I've got all this, like, noise, so it's like it's making me really happy to hear you talking about this, and it's reminding me too. So I'm super curious then for anybody listening, even, like, it for my own well-being today, like, how do you catch it when you start getting caught like, what's the mindset for somebody that needs to, like, catch that stuff and then regroup and get back into this authentic place of just not being in that perfectionism trap or trying to live up to where you think you should be and that kind of thing? Is there like tips and tricks around that? Like, how do we catch it in the moment?
Yeah, so I always sometimes we don't catch it in the moment. And I think that giving us the ability to not, I think there's so much power. We do this as therapists, journal and all that, but there's so much power in reflection, right? And so it's almost sometimes we have to do that self-observation. What was my day like? What was challenging? What was great about today? What about this is really hard? And I think one of the things that I say, what is these emotions coming up? How do we deal with that? So we can then begin to care for ourselves. I think one of the hardest emotions that we don't talk about enough, but happens all the time is grief, because there's always, wherever there's loss, there's grief. Whether there's a shift, whether there's a change. And sometimes we could be like, I don't know what's going on. And most of the time I find like if I can't name an emotion, there's grief. And so then it could be grieving. I don't feel like I'm where I am or where I should be, which is a big one, right? Where I imagined I would be. And so we're also connecting to ourselves in that way. So I think it's more of the being intentional to reflect about our emotions, our thoughts, the kind of the brain dumping, and asking ourselves, how can I care for myself in this moment? What is going to make me feel more safe? Do I need to slow down and pay attention? I did it the other day on Sunday. I just was not feeling great. And I just was like, well, I'm going to allow myself to feel sad and all these things and not try to push it and rush it. And the next day I was wonderful. And so sometimes we can really want to push past this and get to the other side. And it's really, I would say the big thing is just intentionally caring for ourselves, because a lot of us, I know in therapists, we've had our own stuff going on. And in the missed gaps of care and not having emotional attunement, it's now our job the responsibility to give that to ourselves, to the younger version of ourselves, and truly paying attention to that. And noticing, one of my things I like to talk about is alignment. It's like, listen to your body. I cannot express. I really, this is my pet peeve. One of my pet peeves about grad programs and our counseling programs is there was not enough focus on the body, so much on the mind and all that. And I really hope they change that to do more focus on the body. But I always say our mind will lie to us and our body will not. Being on a sabbatical really taught me the importance of listening to my body, even if it feels off or weird. Like my body is telling me what I need, and giving it that respect and honoring our bodies. So, yeah.
Nice. Oh, I love that so much. Now, shifting a little bit, right? You're a therapist, right? But you have with this sabbatical and these realizations and maybe now the perfectionism, you've decided to kind of scale out of the one-to-one like therapy model and help other, I guess, healers. I don't know exactly who all is your like ideal person that you're helping right now, but I'd love to talk about how you went from like I'm seeing clients to the sabbatical, this realization, and then now what you're doing now with this soulful clinician collective. I would love to just talk about that transition and how you got to that place.
I would say still working on it, on building this membership. There's people in there and you're still building. I think one of the biggest things I want to say that is like, oh, it takes longer to build a membership than I realized. But I know this is such a needed thing. So I've actually been mentoring clinicians new. So it's a big focus is on new clinicians. However, I do have clinicians who just got their new license in there too. And so I've been mentoring neuro clinicians to give back, because I feel like often there can be a lot of gatekeeping in our community, or that sense sometimes that you have to earn your dues. And I'm like, that makes no sense to me, because we're all in the helping field. And why would you want another therapist to struggle and like they're not able to do good work? So I've always been mentoring and really kind of wanting to do it more on a big scale, realizing from the sabbatical how one-on-one work is tiring, and like I'm not going to do this forever. And so now I'm at the stage of work having this membership. So I've been doing this 10 years now, Kim, to give back on an online presence. So the whole idea is really filling in the gaps between what we don't get in grad programs and what it means to be a therapist in the real world. So it's not supervision, it's mentorship. It's an addition and an additional service to supervision, because there's no power relationship. And it's more about focus on you might want to build a niche, or you might want to do some marketing, or a lot of things we're talking about is like imposter syndrome. I'll have guest speakers. I did the other day about money mindset and building your private practice, because no one talks about money and business. And so really filling in those gaps that are essential, not just sitting with a client. There's so many other things when you become a therapist out in the real world, and filling in those gaps and answering all the questions and having the community where people feel supported, because it can be an isolating field. That's the whole idea, and why I created it. Because I feel like if we can do that and truly align to how we're wired, how we're connected, thrive as therapists, it's going to change the game for the mental health field if we're better therapists, aligning to our truth rather than trying to figure it all out and do things that don't even work for how we're wired and created.
Yeah, and even give her permission already, even to new clinicians, to say the one-to-one model for like the rest of your life is probably not going to be sustainable for most people. It gets exhausting. The compassion fatigue, the burnout. I mean, it's real. Just like seeing those one-to-one clients back to back for like 25 years, like I couldn't even imagine doing that anymore. So being able to have like the permission to the new therapist to say, this is the trajectory for a lot of clinicians, that you don't have to just stay in this one-to-one model forever in this private practice that you built kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that. I love that word, permission. And that's very big about what I'm out. One of my gifts is delivering the permission slip. So yeah, it totally is that permission to think outside the box and do something different.
That's awesome. Part of this podcast, we talk a lot about like entrepreneurship and what you're doing with the Soulful Clinician Collective to just be able to maybe scale out, help on a bigger scale, support clinicians or whatever your ideal customer is. But I'd love to always ask, like, what does your lifestyle look like now that you've scaled a little bit and not having to like see 40 clients a week or whatever? What does it look like? Are you still doing sabbaticals? Do you like just travel and work? How do you structure that? Because I think a lot of people want to know, like, how do I scale up and out? And then how do I like make it work with this lifestyle of a traveler or somebody that likes to go around the world just doing things?
Something I've always done once I left was not left once because this is a second career for me. So once I graduated, I always said I wanted to work 3 days a week, see clients and do other things. And that is literally what I have done. And I find that I keep dwindling down how many clients I see a day, what time I finish. So this year alone, I think I've been to 4 different countries. I went to Brazil. I've been to, I did mention my grandmother's Jamaican. Been to Jamaica twice already this year, and went to San Andreas, which is a island just off Colombia. So I'm still traveling, right? It's still a big focus, and now I'm still thinking I haven't booked anything for December, but we'll see where I go. But when I was in Jamaica, both times I was working and seeing clients online. And so it's giving me the more flexibility to think differently, think outside the box. But I'm always focused, like, what's important to me. So even just last weekend, I put all my days in the calendar for next year. I just put a guideline of 5 weeks of when I want to be off. Now, it might change, but the whole idea is to keep myself accountable and not get carried away in that. Now I have an assistant who's amazing. I have a virtual assistant who's absolutely amazing. If you can hire one, hire one.
Yeah, I could not live
So
without
I
mine at
think,
this point, I swear.
what were we doing before? I
She
don't know.
knows where everything is. Like, I can't even find stuff. I message her, she's like, "It's right here, Kim." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I love you so much."
Yeah. And so I think being able to scale and expand, you can hire a virtual assistant, right? You
Yes.
can do those things that are a bit more different and do the traveling and just expand your mind. You can think like a CEO. You can hire people to help you with your marketing and start thinking from a CEO perspective. Even one of the things now is like, I'm thinking 5 years down the line, I want to have a whole YouTube channel. So it's not just the Soulful Clinician membership. Well, you can find the YouTube, or if you want to do online courses, that's 5 years down the line. I would never think about that. A lot of the time is like day to day or maybe 6 months from now. But I'm like, okay, let me think 5 years from now. What does that look like to build this up? Because now I'm going to want to be thinking about retirement. I'm going to want to work. I don't know if I'll ever stop working, but I know that I want to work less. My question is always, how do I work less and make great money?
Yeah.
That's my question to myself. Like, yeah.
Me too.
So
Me
it's
too.
just really Yeah, and it's just freedom, and people know that. It's just more freedom, it's more joy. And I'm not saying I don't have hard moments and hard days, because I do, but there is a freedom to, like, the other day I did something, I made an adjustment, just a simple adjustment on my intake paperwork, because I found that I was having phone calls with people who I don't take insurance, and I was having phone calls with people who wanted to use insurance. I just made an adjustment and I said, click this if you want insurance. Like, I don't. I made it very clear. And then if you want insurance, these are my referral sources. So that even in my intake into the inquiry, I'm getting now less inquiries and wasting my time. So I done that 3 weeks ago, and the last two people, they booked because they already know what the deal is. And I'm not having to be like, oh, wasting my time, their time, but I'm still giving you referrals on my website. So things like that, you're like, how can I create more time? How can I do things more efficiently that makes my business run smoother and makes me, not take up my capacity so I can still do great work and run a business?
Yeah, so smart. Those little tweaks, right? Just being able to identify like the time sucks in our lives. And then, what's a little automation or a little tweak or something I could hand off to my VA that I'm doing, just being able to have that clarity and mindset around that stuff, all with the goal in sight, right? It's like, how can I make more money, work less? And then being able to have that vision, I think is just genius to say, wow, this one little
Yeah.
tweak has just saved me like 2 hours a week or a month or whatever. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
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 I
Thank you, Kim.
love that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome. I love that so much. So, how do people find you? If they want to find out about the Soulful Clinician Collective, where do we go?
Yeah. So if you are wanting to find out about the Soulful Clinician Collective, it's soulfulcliniciancollective.com. And there's a free 7-day trial. And there is different pricing, whether you are a student, which is $39 a month, whether you are newly just working towards your license is $59. And if you have a full license, it's $79. And it's just on 1 month. You can come in and out when you want, and you can just come on it in for 7 days and just see what it's like. And so that's the best way to find me. My therapy website is authenticallybu.com. And also, I can give your guests a link to download my free ebook. And it's just about 10 things you need to know as new therapists when you're starting out. So I also share with that's also a freebie that you can also take. And they just, want to get those free tips on what we can do to get started as a new therapist. Even though I say, it's new therapists, I'm getting a lot of therapists just even fully licensed just because we just didn't know what to do.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
I don't,
Yeah. Yeah. And just the name Soulful Clinician is so like attractive. But it's like, let me just talk about the soul and like the inner us that needs that like healing and community and, that's just unique to therapists. Like our families don't get it. Our spouses don't get it. They just think you just listen to people talk all day, but it's like, no, it's like draining, like you need that community somewhere. So I really love that you're offering this. I think it's so cool. And for anybody listening, of course, we'll put the links down in the show notes and you guys can click through and get the freebie and then go check out the collective. I love it, Bianca.
yeah,
Thank you
thank
so
you, Kim.
much. Thanks for being a guest today.